Hey, good morning, Pentecostal Church. How are you doing this fine morning? All good? Let me ask you a question. Have you ignited anyone into leadership since we spoke yesterday? Did you do it? Did you just write notes? Sunday's coming, okay? Still time. Send a message to a friend. Hey, I need you on Sunday. I'm doing something. I want to include you in what we're doing. Yesterday we talked about igniting this new culture of leadership development within our churches. And today I want to think about how we train these leaders. But perhaps first we should ask an important question, which is this. How many leaders do you need? If I can use my own denomination as an example, we've recently set a very big goal to start 10,000 new churches in the next decade. But the people that set the goal didn't necessarily think through what it would cost to do that. It will cost us some money and some planning, but the most important resource to make this possible are leaders, many of whom will be new leaders. And so if you just do the simple arithmetic, 10,000 churches, that means it also means a team. Each church will need 5 to 20, 25 people with it. Maybe there's an evangelist, maybe there's an administrator, a children's worker, a youth worker, whatever it might be. If you add that up very quickly, you get to big numbers like maybe 80,000 or even a 250,000 people, new leaders that we need to accomplish the vision that we think God has given us. And we've concluded from this that many of these leaders will be not ordained leaders. And they won't go through the traditional church leader training process. Many of them might not be leaders right now. They might be people that we have yet to begin igniting their leadership. And hey, here's a thought. Many of them may not even yet be Christians. Jesus may need to call them in order for them to move forward in 5 years or 10 years' time. And so we know the scale of this opportunity is bigger than what our Bible colleges can cope with. It will force us to rediscover how to train leaders really well through the local church. And I also consider this every year as a pastor. How will I train the leaders that I think I need this year in my church? So I've looked at this and I want to share some thoughts with you. The thinking that I've explored became something I studied in my doctorate. And I told you the first part of it yesterday, the inspiration that came from this church I was leading and the necessity to find new leaders and how it led me unexpectedly to kind of almost start a new culture of leadership development. We were learning about apprenticeship. And apprenticeship is the most ancient form of... Can someone click it for me? Apprenticeship is the most ancient form of leadership development. At its heart, it's leadership by copying. Every parent knows this. Everyone that's worked with children know this, that the younger generation learns by copying what they see the older generation do. As long as they're given an opportunity to get close enough to see, they have the ability to learn from those that are ahead of them. And it's a way of training, apprenticeship, a way of training that's very different from the normal way that we think about training in a modern world, where we put people often in a classroom in order to learn how to do something. And actually, so many of our ministers are trained in a classroom rather than being trained by copying and learning and being mentored by the older generation. And so the second inspiration that came to me came from the city where I live. Near my office on the same street are two ancient trades that used to serve the cathedral church. One is the Minster Glazier. They do the stained glass repair. And the other is the stone yard. They repair the stone. And every day I walk past them, probably hundreds of times, and one day it just occurred to me, hey, what I'm doing in church is really, it's an old method, that we're rediscovering. And so this is something I studied in order to learn. How can I understand the components of this better? And both of these were ancient ideas, medieval practices. And the word you've probably heard is the craft guilds. The guilds were common all over Europe. For 700 years, from the turn of the millennial up to the Industrial Revolution, the guilds were the place where work was done and people learned how to have a trade, a craft. They learned their employment and their skills. And these guilds focused on practical training, on the job learning, learning by doing, learning through discovering creativity. And in the workshops of the guilds, the experienced masters shared their knowledge and skills directly with the apprentices, passing on to the next generation what they had learned so it could pass through the generations. And it was hands-on training, practical assessment, community learning. And each worker was developed as a unique individual, like a creative, like an artist. And the guilds were excellent at passing their knowledge down the generations. The wisdom that they accumulated passed through these workshops from generation to generation. And they came to a sudden end with the Industrial Revolution. A lot of the wisdom was lost. And the Industrial Revolution didn't just change work. It didn't just introduce machines into work. The Industrial Revolution also changed the way that we learn. And it made people and their skills into a machine rather than just a sort of a creative thing. So using the guilds, I want to think about 3 stages of training that deserve our focus and our attention, that we will see in our churches today. Do you like my image? I asked ChatGPT, draw 3 people that look Nordic, okay? So tell me afterwards if they look Nordic. The first guy we have are the apprentices, and we were thinking about those yesterday. They are people at the beginning of their learning. And a question for all of us is, do you have any apprentices? Are you apprenticing somebody right now? Who are you personally training to be like you? Have you got someone who is going to be your successor? Have you got someone that might go beyond you and be better than you? Have you got someone when you're teaching them something you know that they need to know, that you can show them how to learn? And several things are important for this guy, the apprentice, the first person. The first is the opportunity to participate. And the gift we give the apprentice is the ability to participate, because they can't learn by copying unless they have the opportunity to see what's happening and to be up close with those that are doing it. And one of the examples I gave you yesterday, Miriam. I remember when I saw further potential in Miriam, and so I invited her to join the senior leadership team. And I said, Miriam, you're coming to the senior leadership team. You are not to say anything. I just want you to sit there, make notes. The second time I came, I said, Miriam, at some point in the meeting, I'll ask you a question. Be very brief. Just say one thing. Okay. The next time I spoke to her, I said, is it avalanche maybe? No. Do we run? Under the table. Okay, we're safe. The next time I said, okay, Miriam, you can only speak if it's about students, which are what you're doing. And then eventually she became part of our team. And then when she knew she was going to the next church, we decided that Holly would learn about the senior leadership team. So I said to Miriam, just do with Holly what I did with you. And that's how Holly learned. So the apprentices, they learn through participation. The second is the apprentices need the support structures. Did you see yesterday how we help them do better than they could do on their own? This is what you need to give someone when they're starting. You need to give them a model, a framework. You need to give them a push. You need to lend them some of your ability so that they can get started quickly and feel like this is something that they can do. And that's why we did things like Ignition Sunday. We created a structure that helped them to get going quickly and faster than they could just on their own. The third is that you need to stretch them. And the term is the zone of proximal development. But what it means is this: people grow when you stretch them. If you under-challenge someone, they get bored, they give up. If you over-challenge them, they break, they become disheartened. And so it's in the skill of the church leader to understand, how much can I challenge this person to do the next thing? And I think a question we're always asking ourselves when we're training an apprentice is, what's next for this person? What's next for Miriam? What's the next thing that I need to do? I'm going to keep stretching her so she can learn more. And the fourth thing for the apprentice is practical testing. And apprentices in the guilds were assessed by their ability to produce something that showed what they'd been learning. Here's an example on the screen from Ireland. This is still done today in Waterford Crystal. If you learn to be a glassmaker, you graduate as an apprentice when you can make the apprenticeship bowl. And the bowl, they give you a clear, plain bowl, and the bowl demonstrates all the cuts and techniques and methods that you are shown as an apprentice. And here's the rule: you can do the apprenticeship bowl whenever you want. But of course, on the first day you can't do it. On the first week you can't do it. But you could try it after a year, or you could wait 10 years or 20 years. The point wasn't how long we trained you. The point is, we'll know when you're ready, when you can produce some evidence of your learning. I wonder what the equivalent is for us: leading a small group, running an alpha, planning a sermon series, whatever it might be. We can think of, what are the things that will show me that this person has completed this first phase of training. The next guy is the journeyman. And by the way, some people, for apprenticeship, that's good enough. That's what they're called to do, and that's what they're going to do. The next guy is the journeyman. And this is a historic term, but I use it to think of women and men, okay? But the guilds favored the men. But this is for women or men. And we might think of these people as interns. It's from the French word journée, meaning day. So a journeyman is somebody who is a skilled worker who could be paid for their work, okay? They're not an apprentice, okay? They have some skills. They are useful. And people describe the journeyman as having wandering years. The idea is that they are now in a phase where they will learn by moving around. They've stayed in the first place to learn the basic things, but now this second phase requires them to go to new places and learn new things. And the idea isn't that they know everything, but through their apprenticeship, they have been taught enough in order to self-teach the next steps. Does that make sense? They understand the process of learning, and now they can take ownership of it. So they actually get kicked out of the workshop, and they meant to travel. And I met some German stonemasons who were in York, who were journeymen, and they told me that's exactly what they do. They're pushed out of their workshop. They're told, you can't come back for 3 years. You must travel, move on every 3 to 4 months, go to different places, and in each place, be useful and learn new things. And the journeymen travel around doing that. The medieval guys did it for 3 years or more. And then at the end, they were assessed through creativity again. The bowl, that was called a piece. An apprentice produced a piece as evidence of their training. A journeyman, to become a master, produced a masterpiece. Have you heard that term? That's the meaning of the word. And the masterpiece showed basic skills and new learning combined of evidence that they have completed their second phase. And this was the test in the guilds to become a master. And some guilds only let you have one attempt at a masterpiece. If you didn't get it, it would never be yours. So there's a question for us. In our movement, what opportunities do we have for people to be journeymen, to be wandering interns? What opportunities do they have to move around and learn from other people? The next role is masters. And again, this is a woman or a man. This is an expert. This is someone who is at a high level of training. They've completed an apprenticeship. They've learned more widely. They've shown evidence of their learning. And they are now ready to train other people. And this is how the cycle of training in this model can reproduce. And in this guild world, seniority requires that you have done what you teach to others, and that you teach to others what you are doing. It's the idea that actually we never separate ourselves from investing in the next generation. Now, I wonder if we could just quickly consider three dimensions that are important to this type of training. The first is, and I'm behind on my slides, whoops, here we go. The first is training masters, and we've already talked about the masters. And one of the things that I learned about masters when I studied them is that the master, the guy at the top, always trained the new person. I wonder if we do that, do we? Sometimes we delegate that away. Sometimes we just delegate the nearly ready person. But in the guilds, they understood that the person with the most experience was the best person to ignite the new person. I've maybe noticed that myself. Sometimes I just notice something that the other leaders who aren't as experienced don't really notice. A tiny thing, a small thing. Like I've been learning on a rowing machine, and I sent a video to like a professional trainer, and he noticed just my wrist is slightly wrong and my back is slightly wrong. Someone else might not have noticed, but he noticed because he's a master. And he was able to say, this is going to cause you problems unless you fix it now, but so good that you came to me now, you can learn the better technique. So I wonder if we are all involved in training the next generation, or whether we kind of delegate it away to someone else. The next thing is to recognize the importance of our workshops. The guilds had carpentry workshops and stone workshops. Our workshops are our churches when they gather. And our church is a place of training. We don't need to send people away to train. People can train in our churches. I can think of no better place to learn how to serve Jesus as a leader than the local church on Sunday, than in the prayer meeting, than in the small group meeting, than in a leadership meeting. All of these things afford us with as many opportunities as we need to learn. I don't know if you have it, but where I live, we have 2 hospitals, and one is a teaching hospital. Do you have it? So if you go to the teaching hospital, you see the doctor, and then like 10 teenagers who are apparently also doctors, but they're learning. And the doctor looks at your nose or your ear or whatever, and then all the other guys have a look, and it's important because they're learning, okay? I think this is what our churches should be like. They should be like a teaching church where everyone knows this is the style of our church. We are so committed to the next generation that everything we do is also a teaching and a learning opportunity. And the third thing is this: the importance of releasing artistry. Something got lost when our world became modernized and industrialized, because before that, everyone who worked was an artist. And I think this idea of artistry is important to ministry today. I think I'm training some of my students for ministry that I don't know what they will be doing in 10 years or 20 years. So I can't favor methods, I need to teach them principles. I think of it like this: I need to teach them how to paint. I don't know what pictures they will need to paint, but if I teach them how to paint, they'll know when they get there, when they know what they need to do. And everyone can become more creative. Creativity unlocks ministry potential. I've got a friend in London, whenever he trains a new leader, he takes them with him to an art gallery and he gives them things to do and look at because he wants them to understand the thing that you're getting trained for is creative. It's about releasing imagination and new things. And everyone can develop in creativity. I want you to just think about this simple picture. Imagine a jazz musician. And you listen to them play, and it's an original song that's never been heard before, and it's beautiful. How did they reach that level of creativity? Well, I've studied this, and the answer is 2 steps. The first step is an apprenticeship where they learn the basic skills. Because that guy playing the new song, he learned to do the chords and the scales, and then he learned to play someone else's song, and someone said, you're not doing it quite right, and he practiced and practiced. But then there was a second phase when he had enough skills that someone could say, now you have the skills, you can begin to release creativity. And creativity is released when we are playful, when we're youthful, when we're childlike, when we unlock our imagination. And let me close with this. I think this final idea, creativity, is so important to our churches today. As I work with churches, one of the things I think they most need is to discover new creativity. They need to unlock their imagination for what the Holy Spirit wants to do in and through their churches. Older leaders need to rediscover their youthful zeal. And younger emerging leaders need permission to dream dreams and imagine what God might do. I think Mark Batterson puts this brilliantly. He says this: imagination is the road less traveled. The more you pray, the bigger your imagination becomes, because the Holy Spirit supersizes it with God-sized dreams. Nothing honors God more than a big dream. That's the way that beyond our accomplishment, beyond our ability to accomplish. Why? Because there's no way that we can take credit for it. And nothing is better for our spiritual development than a big dream, because it keeps us on our knees. Amen.